For years now, the video game landscape has been a gold rush. Publisher after publisher looking for their payday in the live service desert, digging beyond the depths of what is logical in order to try and find the next big success. And with failure after failure, and us gamers saying that we never asked for this, it seems that finally it's getting through their skulls, but just a little bit. Now look, that was a bit of an exaggeration, okay? It's not every single publisher, it's not everybody trying to make live service games, but it is a abnormal amount, and especially trying to fit them where they don't belong. While there have been tons of fantastic games since the live service multiplayer boom, way more fantastic games than you would think if you just looked online at the amount of people complaining, it is also fair to say that the live service craze has been an obsession. Pretty much every single publisher out there has attempted to make as much money as possible by using the live service multiplayer shared world schemes. The same ones that we keep telling them we don't want. The same ones that aren't even backed by the market anymore. And they say that hindsight is 20/20. But I will remind you that Electronic Arts not only thought that Dragon Age the Veilguard should be a live service multiplayer game, but when that game came out, after its troubled development and just not being a very good game, after it flopped, CEO of EA Andrew Wilson said that the reason it flopped is because they didn't go with the original idea of making it a live service. So these people are so obsessed with this concept that not even hindsight works anymore, when pretty much any gamer out there could have told you, in this case, that foresight works just as well. Sony, despite coming out with games, finally plural, is still trucking along with their live service ambitions in a new generation of PlayStation defined by Concord, defined by potentially the upcoming Fair Games, defined by investing as much money as possible into things that nobody has ever asked for. Just a constant and fundamental misunderstanding of the market. And none of this is new. You might even think that this is a broken record. You might be thinking, wait, haven't I watched this video like 30 times from different people now? But listen, things are changing. You see, firstly, it is important that we continue to make noise and complain about all of this stuff, because the more we complain and the more that the market rewards the things we actually want, the more that things actually change. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. But you see, none of the complaints matter until we see actual meaningful change. And I have to say that the week of April 13th saw such a volume of incredibly high quality both indie and AAA releases, all of which go completely against what the game industry had decided was the future, that it is the first time that we can point to a specific moment and say, this is where stuff changed. Because it's not just that we saw a ton of great games release. Oh no, it's that we saw a ton of great games succeed. And all of that happening at the very same time that the company that basically launched the live service boom in Epic Games is just being destroyed. The poster boy for what live service success looks like is floundering due to critical internal mistakes and poor decision making. They are desperate to stop the bleeding, as now their cash cow has finally run dry. And of course, the people who pay the price are the talented people who were just doing what they were told to, while management fires them in order to save face in front of the shareholders, the almighty powerful shareholders. But aside from that, we're seeing the actual collapse. We're seeing that this model doesn't have legs because it's predicated on eternal, unquenchable greed that can only be sustained if customers are kept in the dark and manipulated to degrees that start to border on illegality. One by one, everything that the AAA industry has been chasing has been knocked down, if we're being completely honest, in a matter of like 3 weeks. And the clear, concise, trackable, lookable thing, you can look at the statistics that show it, it's right there, you can look at the sales. This time it's so big that you can't ignore it. This is the sort of success that makes publishers that are currently thinking about their next live service project stop and say, wait a minute, maybe that's not a great idea. You could dig deeper, but just look at the Steam bestsellers list. Look at all of these single-player games. Sure, you have your live service staples, but definitely nothing new. The market has spoken, and it has spoken loudly enough for things to start changing. But how and why and towards what? What is actually going on with video games today for an industry that seems like it's going through the worst period that it could go through to look so promising and to fill us, the customers, with so much joy right now? Well, there's a lot of stuff behind it. Many things had to happen to lead into a week where games like Mouse P.I. for Hire and Replaced and Ground Zero and of course Windrose to come out, and for the week to be capped off by a AAA success story that's worth rooting for in Pragmata. For us to champion that even AAA has learned its lesson. For us to point to these successes and tell pretty much everybody else out there, hey, would you like money? Do what they did. It's not that hard, but I can tell you one thing up front. What is becoming very clear is that all of the types of games that AAA has consistently said are not worth making anymore are definitely worth making. Single-player driven experiences that are meant to end, that are not meant to consume your life. Single-player or co-op driven experiences that are designed for you to have fun instead of you waiting for the monthly reset. And yes, major publishers aren't just learning the lessons, they're applying them. And I think that's worth looking at, right? Because all the doom and gloom and all the criticism doesn't really work unless we also celebrate the victories. And there's a lot of very interesting stuff that's happened in the world of games. And trust me, if you've wanted to feel hopeful about the future of video games for a while, yeah, this is going to be the video for you. And this is how it's going to work. We're going to cover some of the big changes that are happening in AAA, the examples of how companies are actually abandoning the live service ambitions and starting to move towards, well, what we actually want them to make, which is just good games. In a success to failure to success sandwich, we're then going to talk about epic games, about how the live service mentality is actually dying out, vindicating the decision of a lot of companies to stop pursuing that route. And to top it all off, we're going to talk about my beloved indies, which are now not just the place where you find great games, niche games that cater to specifically what you want. It's where you find massive successes that sell millions. And the constant proof that what we want is not what the AAA industry thinks we want. So hi, I'm Mug, and if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. It's great to see you, and you're also looking absolutely fantastic. If at any point you like the video, hit the little like button, all right? It gets harder every day to compete with like AI slop and automated shorts conversions and all of this stuff. I try and make sure that every video I make is worth your while, so hitting that like button helps it reach out there, get further. And if you really like the way that I cover the world of gaming, from analysis to news to reviews to essays like this one, consider subscribing. Just maybe don't do it yet. Make sure that what I said is true, that what I do is worth your time. Today, though, it's time to celebrate, because everything that the video game industry said should happen hasn't, and instead, we're watching them fail and change course in real time. This is the part of the video where I roll a cool transition. Personally, I believe that context is important. Without it, we can't really understand why things matter. So, even though this is something I've talked about many times, I'm going to keep it very short, but we do need to answer the question, why has there been such an obsession with live service games, just in case it isn't apparent to someone. Companies have been chasing live services because the amount of investment that goes into them versus the returns that they can get from them are considerably better than anything else you could do in gaming. During the peak of the live service boom, especially just before COVID and during COVID, it was very common to hear people that knew about numbers say that it was worth investing into up to 10 live service games, because if just one of them succeeded, it wouldn't just cover for the cost of developing all 10, it would still be the most profitable game that the company could come out with. This is a mantra that some companies have followed literally, like Sony with their slate of PlayStation Live service attempts that have, I mean, you know what's happened, all right? The Concord, we hear it all the time. But the idea of it was very simple. The evolution of video games shouldn't be towards crafting better and better experiences that fit the traditional mold of you sit down, you play something, you enjoy the experience, and then you either put it back on the shelf and pick it up whenever you want, or you sell it, or you just, you're done with it. No, they should always be online, they should be constantly evolving, there should always be a reason for people to log back in, and if we can make people continue to play a game, potentially forever, we can continue to sell them crap, potentially forever. Namely, that even games that have no online functionality at all now had an excuse to come out broken. Because since games aren't a point in time, an actual thing that you buy and experience there, and instead every game is now something that exists in perpetuity as long as there is profitability, it doesn't matter if the game we release is broken. We'll patch it later. We'll make the money now, fix later. All right, why would the customer deserve anything? Come on, guys.
Save me!
It really is a slow descent into madness and hostility towards not just the customer, but towards the art form of video games, towards the enjoyment of them, and towards any sort of innovation. And of course, the main perpetrators of all of this have been the major AAA publishers, because they're the ones who have the most money to try and force the live service future onto us. You see, if all of them support the same idea, and the only thing they offer us are live service games, if you want to play something at some point, you'll have to play one of those. Unfortunately, they made a couple of critical mistakes. Number one, if you're trying to sell people an infinite game, you can only really sell them one, because there's a finite amount of people on the planet, and then you start breaking them down into how many of them play video games, and since there's only 7 million people on the planet, that's only probably what, like 4 million gamers? I thought that joke was funny, but then I realized that somebody's gonna think that I actually think that. The second mistake is that they assumed that people would do that as if, I don't know, indie games and backlogs don't exist. What? And so instead of a house of cards, it felt more like a house of feathers that was built in Oklahoma during tornado season. And we have been voicing our complaints against this system for a while, because it has been, at many times, pretty insulting to us. Consistently, it seems that these companies have started to value us less as customers and more as numbers. Numbers to feed an ever-growing machine that if it ever stops growing, well, at least to them, the world would end. But now, and I know I'm not alone in this feeling, the tides are changing. And I know that there's a ton of you already typing down below that these companies are stupid because they think we don't have backlogs. And trust me, I'm right there with you. I played 10 hours of Resonance of Fate this week. Don't ask me why, although I'd like to play more. I'd really like to make retrospectives again, by the way, but I don't know if they fit on this channel anymore. Should I just upload them here? Should I make a second channel? If you have an opinion on this at all, please let me know. But not only did I play 10 hours of Resonance of Fate, I also played 20 hours of Death Stranding 2 and 10 hours of Mouse P.I. for Hire. And I did that because I love all video games, and I don't want to believe that the best video games are behind us. I want to think that the best games are yet to come. And for that, the industry needs to correct itself, and it seems to be doing so. And for me, the best example of that right now is Capcom. I know what people are going to say. I'm a shill. I'm such a Capcom shill. And you know what I'm going to say? I'm a shill for good games. That's a crazy concept, right? When companies do bad stuff, punish them. When they do good stuff, praise them. And I think Capcom right now is the example that AAA publishers should follow. That doesn't mean that Capcom has always been great, nor that they're the best thing since sliced bread at the moment. They still experiment, and they still make mistakes, and they still chase profit in ways that maybe aren't the best. Monster Hunter Wilds, in many ways, still major problems with that game. The reviews reflect it. They have been obsessed with turning the very profitable and very successful Resident Evil franchise into some sort of live service for many, many years, leading to some of the worst games not just that the franchise has seen, but potentially that video games have ever seen. And sometimes they try really hard and they really miss the mark, still chasing that live service money with stuff like Exoprimal, although I personally like Exoprimal. It's a weird game in the ways that I like weird games. But even with all of those problems, it's hard to deny that the current run that Capcom is on is so successful that it is impossible to ignore. And not just from the perspective of gamers wanting to play good games, but from the perspective of any other AAA publisher out there. Let's recap real quick. Just this year, Capcom put out Resident Evil 9, which is, by all accounts, an excellent game. I have a review up on the channel that is a very successful sequel in a highly profitable and popular franchise of Resident Evil. It has done something that many people thought impossible and managed to combine the Resident Evil 7 style with the Resident Evil 4 remake style and kind of fuse those together into something that makes most people happy, if not everybody, but I think that's a great achievement. They followed that up with Monster Hunter Stories 3, which is a game that has been criminally underappreciated and underlooked, especially given how big of a franchise Monster Hunter is, because it's not just a fantastic JRPG, but it is Capcom taking their spin-off series and treating it like its mainline, crafting it a brand new identity and going deeper than ever into all of its systems to make something that really calling it a spin-off doesn't do it justice. And as a creature collector slash breeder, it kicks the ever-loving you-know-what out of you-know-who. And just this last week, a week that I think will go down in history for video games, they capped off that week with Pragmata, a brand new IP, something that companies historically, famously, refuse to invest in, that isn't just a fantastic game that everybody that's playing it seems to love it, both critics and just you and me, customers, but a game that one of the main reasons that people are praising it is just how much of classic video game energy it has to it. I said it in my own review, this game feels like it comes out of the era when Capcom had Clover. Experimental but refined, fun, fresh, exciting, and for the purposes of this video, financially successful. Over 1 million copies sold in 2 days for a brand new IP, which is absolutely crazy and goes against everything that the AAA industry has been saying. That new IPs are risky and don't work and you shouldn't do them and they're always a failure, just stop. But Capcom, capitalizing on their recent successes, also made sure to provide in their new IP something that people were desperately looking for. A short, concise, and very polished action adventure with a good story at its core that also comes with a ton of reasons to replay it, bonuses, extra modes, and like classic video game unlockables, which is it's so weird to say that, right? Like I remember when it was exciting to replay a game 2 or 3 times in order to unlock the new super secret costumes, and like Pragmata has that. Sure, it has pre-order bonus, but who cares about that? It's that it actually gives me that classic feeling of, oh, there's some motivation to keep playing this game beyond the fact that it's just great because I get little doodads and they're not charging me for that. What is this? Is that a partially sad statement? Yes. I have nothing to add. And just in case you weren't sure, by the way, they're gonna complete this whole thing, sequel, spin-off, new IP, and reboot with the upcoming Onimusha. Let me reiterate here, these are 4 purely single-player titles that make no attempt to be forever games or live services that you are meant to play for years and years on end. They are not vehicles to sell you microtransactions. They are full, complete video games that remind us that the experience of AAA can just be a high price that is compensated by high production value, by good performance, by good feature sets allowed on PC so that we don't have to fiddle with stuff in order to make it work. Polished experiences where their budget and therefore their price tag can be felt the moment that you start them up, instead of broken messes that they will fix later alongside their new DLC that you can buy. And I really don't think that it's a stretch to say, even though there's no market analysis that I can cite for it, that the confidence that people have in Capcom's output, especially when they say this is a single-player game, is a major reason that Pragmata has seen success as a new IP. It is because people trust Capcom to put out a good game. Something that at this point would be impossible to say about Ubisoft or EA or Activision, and like that, so many others. From the biggest to some of the not that big, even stuff like CD Projekt Red. Trust me, I love Cyberpunk 2077, especially what it is today and what it ended up being after Phantom Liberty. But if they want me to trust them that The Witcher 4 runs well on release, that's not happening. I'm sorry. You gotta earn that again. And I'm sure I'm not alone on that, no matter how excited I might be for whatever CD Projekt Red does next. But hey, it's not just Capcom. Plenty of other companies are doing great stuff. Stuff that, in a sense, is evolving and changing the way that video games are done back to something that they used to be. And I want to highlight 3 other companies that I think deserve a little bit of praise, despite it being potentially quite controversial. So I'm going to start off with the weirdest one, which is, what is happening over at Konami? So, quick history lesson. Konami, legendary video game company. Your Castlevanias, your Metal Gears, your Silent Hills. For a while, they were one of the biggest Japanese developers and publishers. And then they said, wait, it costs too much money to make these video games, and we don't like spending money, we like making it. And they infamously decided that they would stop making video games and exclusively use their IP and, their entire existence to make pachinko machines. When you combine that with certain decisions among the final games that they made, stuff like Metal Gear Survive, or the fact that their response to having, according to them, wasted so much money on Metal Gear's Fox engine was to never make another Metal Gear and instead use that engine for Pro Evolution Soccer or Winning 11 or whatever you want to call it, and stop making games altogether. That is, as I think we like to say on the internet, a choice. But after some changes within the company and some changes in the video game landscape, they've decided to come back. And boy, have they made such an interesting and smart bet. Konami's current operations are, we have all of this IP and we have people who know it and like it. How about we find studios that can take this IP and, make new games? And I know that this is, again, controversial opinion. It shouldn't be. Silent Hill F is fantastic in many ways. Definitely a flawed game, but one of the best Silent Hills we've had in a very long time. We're getting another Silent Hill as well in Townfall, and we're getting a new Castlevania by Evil Empire, who's the team that worked on the Castlevania DLC for Dead Cells. What's very important about this as well is that these are just single-player games. There's no weird live service trickery. They're not returning to video games saying, well, hey, I heard there's people making money in live services. Why don't we make a live service yada yada, which they did. They tried to make a gigantic multiplayer Castlevania at one point, by the way. No, they've come back and said, let's do what we used to do well, except let's take baby steps and let other people do it with our involvement, and then we'll see what happens. And it's not just them coming in to exploit their old IP, because Konami put out Darwin's Paradox last week, which, and I kid you not, is a cinematic platformer. Think something like Inside and Limbo, whatever that genre of 2D puzzly platformer is, but it's about an octopus trying to fundamentally save the world. And they decided to publish this game and give it actual support, to the point that they said, well, what can we do to bolster Darwin's Paradox a bit? Let's let him wear Snake's bandana and do some Metal Gear stuff. And Darwin's Paradox is pretty damn good. I played through that game, and I also played through Replaced, which are both cinematic platformers, and I like Darwin's Paradox a bit more. It's not as beautiful as Replaced, but I like it more. So what? And don't get me wrong, they can turn around and screw up at any moment. And even right now, the prices for their games are, let's say, out of touch. But for now, I have to say, good job, Konami. You're just making games again. And not falling into the pitfalls that you would think they would want to copy. So thank you, Konami, for coming in out of nowhere and saying, oh, actually, we're gonna bet on the winning horse. Wait for this clip to age like milk when they, please don't, Konami. The second company I want to highlight is Pearl Abyss. I talked about this in my dedicated video about Crimson Desert. But the fact that a company that was making an MMO decided to make a single-player game, even if it was originally an MMO, or even if still they want to use this engine and this technology for an MMO, And they put it out and they've seen massive success. 5 million copies sold is incredible. It shows that there's a major appetite for this sort of game and that there is a global appetite, because these Eastern companies, especially from countries that aren't Japan, so mainly Korea and China, they need to see that everybody wants these sorts of games, that they're very successful not only in their territories, but worldwide. And it's allowing us to get these experiences. And I know that people have criticisms about Crimson Desert, but I absolutely love that game. And while I think that its launch version was, at least to me, it was still pretty good, I also think that Pearl Abyss is setting a new standard for what it means to take advantage of the always online nature of things and patching the game up. I will always advocate for the 1.0 version of a game, the one that's on a disc, which doesn't really happen anymore, but for that to be solid and preserved, for games in general, but especially single-player games, to be an experience that you can come back to 20 years later, boot it up, and you can play it, and it's the way it was meant to be played. But if we don't have that, and we need to rely on patches and updates, the speed at which Pearl Abyss has updated Crimson Desert, and the attention they've paid to every little thing that the community has said, is something to applaud. It is major developers that come from businesses like MMOs, in Korea specifically, turning around and doing something different that is also going to fuel innovation and new amazing games to come. The third company I want to shout out, it's on purpose, okay? I'm segue, is ShiftUp, the creators of Stellar Blade, but more importantly, Nikke. Gigantic gacha company takes their gacha money and instead of diversifying into more gacha games, are diversifying into single-player games. And not just Stellar Blade and the upcoming Stellar Blade 2, but they also acquired Unbound, which is Shinji Mikami, Resident Evil's Shinji Mikami's new studio, so that he can work on new IP. They are directly pumping their gacha money into this. Listen, I know that it's not likely to happen, but it helps a future where it might. Can you imagine a juggernaut like Hoyoverse saying, well, what if we made a single-player, full-boxed retail product like a Crimson Desert? I personally think that there's a lot of merit to a lot of live service games, and the biggest problem with them isn't that they exist, it's that they want to turn everything into them. Similarly, I think that a lot of gacha games have a lot of great stuff to them, from great stories to great gameplay systems, and a lot of people would highly enjoy them if they just weren't gacha, if the monetization and progression systems of them weren't tied to that system. So the fact that these companies are identifying that at times and changing it, stuff like the upcoming Dragon Sword Awakening, which is gacha in the East and is coming to the West, transformed into a fully packaged single-player game for $60. The potential for companies that are now amassing talent to diversify into the types of games that normally I prefer, normally I guess most of us prefer. Even just stuff like Project Moon, man, and Limbus Company being what it is, but specifically being there to finance their next crazy full-fledged game. Stuff like Pearl Abyss and ShiftUp are here paving the way for the future of financially successful single-player games and teaching people that diversifying your empire isn't about making 3 more gacha games or 3 more MMOs to squeeze the market as dry as possible and then complain. No, it's about taking your success and actually investing it into a series of projects that are going to offer you a solid, not infinite, but solid return. And I think that at this point, at least within the big companies that move the most money, I have made a very compelling case that the direction we're moving in is a very good one. But this is just one of the 3 factors that makes me believe that we are finally in an era of change. And as I teased in the intro, 2 of those are incredibly positive things, and I'm saving the indies for last. So you know that what's coming next is the downfall, the failure. I know that this is what a lot of people really want. Oh yeah, the bad guys got what they had coming to them. And that's we have to talk about Epic Games now. If this video ends up being my longest essay into the industry, I'm sorry. I let too much time pass. The smart money was on making this 3 different videos, but I refuse. Anyways, Epic Games is not doing well. Now, they would have you believe, and by they I mean Tim Sweeney, that a lot of this is primarily because they got into lawsuits with Apple and Google, and also they spend a lot of money on those Epic Games free games and the Epic Game Store exclusives, and just with the Epic Game Store in general, which I don't know if it's possible for anybody to explain to them at this point, that people go to the Epic Game Store to play Fortnite, and they begrudgingly open it for some exclusives. And the reason they're losing against Steam isn't because their marketplace is just considerably worse in every imaginable metric, but because people have no faith in Epic, they have no transparency, and they feel customer hostile in a way that Steam does not. And if you want to topple the competition, you can't just give people free games. You actually have to offer a better product, okay? But yes, those are the reasons that they would have you believe that Epic had to fire over 1,000 employees because they're losing money. But the reality of it, the truth of it, is just that Fortnite isn't pulling in people like it used to. Now, we can go ahead and cite about a million different things here, and they would like me to. So you know what? I'm going to indulge them just for a little bit before I actually talk about the reality of it. They would like to say that they have made mistakes in trying to diversify the Fortnite platform and turn UEFN into this metaverse user-generated content platform. It started by releasing Lego Fortnite and Rocket Racing and Fortnite Festival. It continued with the implementation of all of their other projects and allowing people to make games, all in the desperate pursuit of what so many people believe to be the next big thing after live service games, although they don't say it and they're not admitting that it doesn't have the future and the legs that they thought it did. But the next big thing, regardless, is user-generated content. Platforms where people make the content and then they play the content that other people made, and you as a middleman make millions of dollars. And that's the true evergreen potential. Why pay people to make games that could fail or could not land and could not make money when you can just put out a platform and then the users make the games? They only get paid if their games are successful, so you don't have to put anything up front, and then other users play those other user-generated games, and you just sit there and collect as a middleman. And that worked enough for Steam to become the juggernaut that it is by just being the service provider in the middle and taking their share. And that is something that Epic wanted to challenge because they know how much money is in it, but now they're looking for that Roblox money. Compared to the burnout that people can feel with one game or one metaverse experience, there is little to none in a platform that is constantly evolving according to its very own users. And that is a smart way of looking at it. A smart thing that they failed to do well and failed to capitalize on by compounding issues that were there from the start. So let's cut the BS and shoot straight. Fortnite is declining because people are tired of Fortnite. Unfortunately, we don't have statistics to say that. Sure, we know that the overall engagement of Fortnite has gone down, and that's a way of saying that maybe the players that are there aren't spending as much money, that it's not bringing old players back or attracting new players at the rate that it did, and that despite that, costs have skyrocketed. But the truth is that Fortnite doesn't hold the cultural relevance that it did before. It's not as fun. It hasn't innovated in a way that has satisfied its players, and instead it's fractured its user base. It's been invaded by AI bots, and it seems that Epic's response to some of that has been, why don't you try some of our other modes that you actually don't want to play? When at the core of it all is that maybe people want a different experience. Maybe people want to break, they want to try something else, and they want to fall in love all over again with something new. Especially when you consider the very important factor that a lot of people that have played Fortnite because it's hot, because it's popular, because it's the cultural zeitgeist and you want to surf it. Those people, especially those that grew up with Fortnite and are now coming into their own with their own income and better ways of managing their slowly dwindling free time, are precisely the people that are going to jump on whatever the next big bandwagon is. These are the people that are the most likely to go and play whatever is the next hot thing, be it Arc Raiders to Windrose to whatever the next chart topper might be. And that's because they enjoy experiencing new stuff, and especially if what they're into is live service, well, they want to play what's live, not what's dying. The mastermind plan of getting the hook so deep into the user base that they would never leave never made sense, because competition is out there and people, sometimes fueled by Fortnite itself, have a certain limit to their attention span. Not to mention just naturally wanting other experiences. It's normal. I'm not here to criticize people who are happy doing the same thing, but look, if you've taken 10 holiday trips and all 10 of them have been to Paris, isn't there a moment where you just sit down and go, I don't know, man, what's over there in Tokyo? It was never an infinite money glitch, and they've done everything they can to try and turn it into one, except the bet that we know is smart because of the previous gigantic section of this video. Epic Games invested their Fortnite money into the Epic Game Store and into Unreal Engine and into their metaverse version of Fortnite. One thing they didn't invest it into were actual video games. Sure, if Fortnite became its own successful Roblox-style UGC platform, that would have been great. Sure, if Unreal Engine 5 weren't hated by most people and were, a better engine and, were better in multiple different ways, that wasn't a bad bet. But the sure bet here was to actually diversify all of their staff into making video games. That is also probably the best bet for the Epic Game Store. Why buy exclusives from other people when you can just make your own games, man? Especially considering that if anybody knows how to use the Unreal Engine to its fullest potential, it would be you. Are you telling me that the best example for Unreal Engine is Fortnite? Because I don't believe you. I don't understand this whole thing of going like, well, let's pay other people for our store to be popular. What are you, PlayStation? There is obviously some of the best talent that you could ever find within video games over at Epic Games. Not just because they work at one of the most successful and cutting edge when it comes to technology companies out there, but also because they have enough money, or had, to pay them what they are worth. Highly competitive salaries that attract the best talent. And instead of giving those people projects like new games that could turn into new successes, new franchises, new IPs, new avenues for success, they let everybody rot in the Fortnite mine, thinking that live service meant eternal. I'm very sorry to say this, and I'm very sorry to remind us all of our mortality for just a moment, but it's just how life works. Everything that is alive will one day die, and that includes your shitty live service. For the purposes of this video and what we're talking about, the collapse of Epic Games is a way of showing the world that this is not the horse that you should be hitching to. This is not a way to build a sustainable future. And if the successes of other companies weren't enough to convince you, maybe the failures of the granddaddy of them all should. And even if you do somehow manage to strike the miracle gold of a successful live service, you better start investing some of that into some future proofing. And if you're a video game company, the easiest future proofing is a video game, especially single player offline video games, the sort that will still generate revenue 10 years from now just from sitting on a Steam, or I guess an Epic Game Store, sale. Games that will live on for many years and continue to generate revenue without the need for constant upkeep, new content, servers. No. You made the thing, it was really good, you leave it there, and it'll be fine. What bothers these companies so much is that these games that have a proven track record of making their money back, oftentimes also making a ton of money, and that can sit in libraries and generate more year over year. That's not interesting because the potential, the ceiling of the return is way too low compared to the golden goose of live service. But now we have way too many examples that prove that, oh, you better start trying some other stuff. Because Epic has gone from being the granddaddy of live services, the people who struck the Fortnite gold, and now they've become a cautionary tale for everybody else. So where do we go from here? Well, we've talked a lot about major successes and major failures in AAA, but now we get to talk about the thing that I find the most interesting. The blurring of the line of what AAA even is. About how in this market what matters is that customers give you money in exchange for your games, and how it doesn't matter if you are the biggest AAA behemoth out there. or the tiniest of indies, $1's a dollar. And while a lot of the bigger companies have stopped caring about $1 and started caring about an hour, started caring about your time, they've started caring about your repeat engagement. The people who are still focused on the dollar or the euro or all of your regional currency, pound, sterling, they are finding more success than ever. Let's talk about some indie games. Look, it's one thing to spend half your life talking about how indie games are awesome and how they are picking up the slack that AAA has dropped. And I genuinely try and do my part. I am constantly trying to highlight indie games. I'm showing off great games as often as I can and playing as many as I can. But it's a very different thing to see them consistently just absolutely dominate. Look, Pragmata might have sold 1 million copies in 2 days, but Windrose didn't take that much longer to sell 1 million copies, and they don't even have the console market. Sure, this is partially because the PC market has been growing at a very, very steady pace, and at this point, I'm very confident in saying that it's undeniably the biggest video game market, and some of the data backs that up. But still, that's impressive. Mouse P.I. for Hire has managed to make a huge splash with its rubber hose style animation that reminds a lot of people of Cuphead, or, you know, the things that inspired Cuphead if you prefer, and also its boomer shooterness, which, look, I like Mouse P.I. for Hire quite a lot, but a lot of it is the presentation. Just wanted to throw this out there that if you're in it for the boomer shooters, which I dearly love, sure, there's Ultra Kill, but why don't you go and give Cultic and Turbo Overkill? Give those 2 games a shot. Those are great shooters, all right? And speaking of alternatives, it's not just Windrose that did really well. I think Soul Mask is doing pretty well. I played some Soul Mask. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Definitely doesn't have as much of the distinct flavor that Windrose kind of immediately just throws into your face of pirate energy, but good on them. And hey, if you're into survival crafters, Enshrouded is coming out with huge update, and really nothing can touch these sorts of games in the AAA space. As I mentioned before, Replaced and Darwin's Paradox are both very much worth playing if you're into the whole cinematic platforming type of game, although my number 1 most anticipated coming up is definitely Deer and Boy, which is a game you should pay it wishlist Deer and Boy if you're into these sorts of games. I earlier used some footage from Alaska Gold Fever, which is a weird game, but it's also people who like it a lot. Let's leave it at that. We have incredibly interesting examples out there, like last week saw a new Ubisoft game release called Morbid Metal. And by Ubisoft, I mean it's made by an indie dev but published through Ubisoft, and I don't know how that works. I don't know when they signed it. I'm pretty sure that this person has a cousin at Ubisoft or something, but Morbid Metal's pretty good if you like Devil May Cry and wish Devil May Cry had the structure of Hades. Talking about the importance of single-player games that can live on forever instead of forcing people into multiplayer circumstances, Road to Vostok took a lot of the world by storm. Sure, a tiny part of the world, but the whole extraction shooter world, I would say, because Road to Vostok offers you the excitement of an extraction shooter with the comfort of single player, knowing that your shame and your failure will be shared only by you. It's just really smart for this solo dev, using Godot by the way, to make a game that capitalizes on the gameplay loop of an extraction shooter, but tailoring it for a single-player experience, and they are being rewarded for that success, now being allowed to stop being a single dev and now hiring people and stuff. And it's really smart by turning a lot of the tension that you have from extraction games into a tutorial-y area that you can stay for a while in, and then leading to a permadeath scenario, meaning that you still have the high stakes that lead to the tension that makes extraction games so addictive. My favorite, coolest release of last week that probably fell under the radar because there's too many damn good video games coming out was Ground Zero, published by Quali. Shoutouts to Quali for constantly picking quality. You're on my up-and-comers list. Ground Zero is a tribute to the era of horror games with pre-rendered backgrounds, with some modernizations to get rid of a bit of the tank controlness of stuff if you want to, but it features a massive single-player campaign with branching paths in which you use traditional survival horror methods with just enough of modern tweaks. Limited inventory space, carefully managing what you can fit in there in order to solve puzzles along with your weapons and your ammo, but combined with a score system for how you take down the enemies leading to upgrades, but it just looks gorgeous and it has the tight design that you would expect from the good old-fashioned tank controls pre-rendered background Resident Evils. It looks and plays fantastic, and I've been having a blast with Ground Zero, and you should go check that out if you miss classic survival horror. Look at that. It doesn't get more classic while modernized than this. One of the best designed indie roguelites that I think have ever been released, White Knuckle, just got a huge anniversary update. And if you're into climbing and kind of platforming and slight horror vibes, I cannot recommend this game enough, especially now. And I haven't even started talking about how you should maybe go play Opus Prism Peak if you're into like visual novels, because people say that's really good. Heck, the people who made The Longing, that really weird game that took like 400 actual real-life days to finish because you just walk slowly, it's like a weird idle game, they came out with Ultimate Lucky Tower based on the Flash game. And people are liking that as well as a weird comedy roguelite. By the time this video is out, you have no idea how much work went into this video, alright? No idea how many things I've had to re-record. Vampire Crawlers will be out, and I will be busy playing it. That is my main motivation for getting this video out, is clearing my schedule so that I can play Vampire Crawlers until I fall asleep. And we are just weeks away from tons of amazing games all of the time. I'm looking forward to Alabaster Dawn. If you don't know what that is, it's the new game from the people who made Crosscode. And if you don't know what Crosscode is, you got a nice weekend ahead of you. Congratulations. And if I didn't have dozens of amazing games that are managing to be successful, that are showing up on the Steam bestsellers page, that are dominating the charts pretty much every single day, I just go back to playing Tales of Destiny Director's Cut for the PS2 with the fan translation. That game's pretty fun. It's a shame it never really got released in the West because it's really good. I recommend the 2D kind of fighting game mechanics in your RPGs. Kind of heavy on the random encounters, like Resonance of Fate. But I'm losing it again, aren't I? Let me be as clear as possible. Video games are awesome, and we have tons of them. And thankfully, it feels like we're gonna get more of the type that deserve to exist, the sort that can be preserved and where resources are spent on something truly amazing that more people can appreciate than before. Actual video games and not just online flops that disappear forever. I think it really does feel like we're exiting the trend of live service and we can start enjoying a lot more games made by the big ones. Live service games aren't going anywhere, because if they did, I would lose Deadlock, and if I lost Deadlock, who am I? And as I've said many times, I love a lot of live service games, but we don't need everything to be a live service. We especially don't need things that don't benefit from being live services being them. There is a saturation of the market, and there is also an inherent part of how companies choose to do live services that is predatory, that is harmful to not just the customer, but also the vision of games themselves. Because these companies don't use live services in order to make the most out of their concepts. They do it as a way of extending the life of a game and monetizing it further, or as an excuse to give you an inferior product. And when people say, man, we hate live services, you can't hate the syringe just because you can fill it with harmful stuff or life-saving stuff. You hate the stuff, not the syringe. All right? How was Deadlock predatory? You can't spend money on it. Let me spend money on it, Valve. Sorry, again. But the point of it all is that seeing big companies hopefully ditch these ideas, these terrible opportunistic measures that they take all of the time in order to try and treat us like cattle and to try and take as much money from us as possible by making inferior games, that seems to be changing. We seem to be moving towards a world where they just make good games again, like Capcom is doing, like Konami is, well, not doing, but financing, I guess. We are closer today than ever before to seeing classic IP or classic ideas come back with newer, fresher innovations that potentially make us fall in love with them all over again. Because now the data is on our side. The sales are on our side. the market is on our side. And that's because we've spoken loud and clear, loud enough that they can no longer ignore what the market is saying, what we have been asking for. There's only one language that large publishers speak, and that's money. And the money has spoken. The future isn't a live service one where people are corralled and forced into a world of constant microtransactions and fear of missing out. It's not about season passes and making video games feel like a job. It's about returning to an era of sustainability where innovation and passion is rewarded. And we're seeing that happen across the entirety of the industry. From the tiniest, most creative, most amateur indie to breakout successes to the largest of the AAA and some of the oldest companies that have been doing this for decades like Capcom. The cards are on the table. The only question that's left for all of the different corporations that have been pushing the live service narrative as far as they can is, are they going to play or are they going to fold? I've been mugged. I didn't want to make this video as big as I did, but then they canceled the Northern Lion Super Cruise and they made me do it. That pushed me to my limit. But really, I did want to make this video. I do want to spread as much positivity, rooted in facts, rooted in reality. And these are golden opportunities for me to tap into what I think I do best, which is collate a bunch of data and information from across way too many places and kind of counter that with my gut instinct, with the ear to the ground, with, I think, being very in tune with us, with gamers, with what we want, with what the people are saying, and crystallizing that into words to share. And I think I did a pretty good job. This is definitely the longest, most difficult video I've had to script and make and hopefully make work for a very long, extended amount of time. And, you know, if you like what I did, videos are normally not this huge, but, you know, maybe now I've earned your subscription, and that would be cool. Because it's a lot. I'm really tired, boss. But I do this because I love it. I care so much about video games, and I love playing games so damn much. It's like, it's such a great feeling to play a fun game, to just be transported somewhere else. And I feel for the first time in a long time that like everything in the industry is heading in the right direction to get more of what's good, less of what's bad. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you just leave here, go play a great video game. Hope you have new stuff on your wish list. Hope you have new information and a new found optimism for where we're going, and that would mean the most. But truly, just thank you so much for watching, especially for sticking through to the end. You can let me know in the comments how I did pacing wise for this, because this was an undertaking. But an extra special thanks to the members of the wall, be they members here on YouTube or on Patreon. These are the people that support me directly, and when I want to take like 2-3 extra days to really make sure that I can do just one big video of everything I want instead of trying to pump out like small videos every day or something. It's their support that calms me down and says, yeah, you do have the time. Take your time, do it right. Remember to enjoy things as much as you can. I'll see you again very soon.